Let's give our warm welcome to Jorge Fernandez Gates from Lima, Peru, in our cycle of interviews for HYPIA, Hyperpolyglot International Association. I'm Matias Barmat, Director of Recruitment. So Jorge Fernandez Gates is an expert in international trade, and he works for the Finnish government in order to bring businesses to the Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia market. Okay, Indian market. About the first question is, what's your opinion about the objectives, the goals that HYPIA pursues? About our objectives are to foster, basically is to spread multilingualism, to foster and to encourage mutual human understanding through the knowledge of language and cultural diversity. About our goals of respect for every culture, to promote them, to foster them. Us as the members, we have an assumed commitment about this. What's your opinion?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Matias, and the whole team of HYPIA for inviting me and accepting me as a member. I'm very happy of being a member right now. Well, to answer your question, I would say that I really appreciate the work you are doing right now, as I believe that languages are endangered. And I mean, I'm referring right now to the minority languages. And I see this effect as I'm Peruvian, and there's many languages which native speakers are decreasing, and I believe that within time we will have less languages spoken. So I really appreciate the work you're doing, because you are also helping to preserve not only languages but the culture of these civilizations, of these cultures, which is very important.
In that sense, HYPIA means a true commitment. But when we talk about a commitment, let me state very clear that HYPIA is, although our minimum requirements are 6 languages fluent or 7-8 language intermediate upwards, HYPIA itself is not a certification of polyglottism or a certification of hyperpolyglotism, but rather it's a commitment of social responsibility associated with languages. What does it mean? Within our respective professions and our respective areas and our respective local realities, that commitment of social responsibility associated with languages is basically the responsible use of our learning capabilities, as us hyperpolyglots are naturally bridges of communication that gather cultures together. We can understand cultures better. The fair use, the responsible use of our social capabilities and our language learning capabilities in order to make this world a better world from our local reality through a global impact. What's your opinion about it?
I mean, yeah, of course. As I said, I mean, the work you're doing is trying. You're preserving the cultures that probably with due to globalization will be lost in time. I also believe it's important that you create this group of people who have learned languages with different methods, and in discussions, everyone shares their learning process, new techniques that can be applied. So that's also very important to discover our author methodologies to learn languages.
No, every language has a story and a culture associated with, as of course you have commented, and those languages and of course those cultures associated with represent a cultural patrimony that we must defend. That's important for us to learn different languages, not only because what kind of language structure or vocabulary or history or non-verbal information that it has, but also the language of try to talking up in the language of my peer, no matter what, trying to talk in the language of the other, no matter what, even though if there are languages spoken by only 100 people or 1,000 people, the mere fact that it's your native language is it's enough motivation to learn your language.
Right, exactly. And as you said, it's whether it's spoken by I don't know 10 people or I mean, that doesn't matter, right? You'll still want to learn it.
Let's talk about your journey about language learning. You began learning in a prestigious British school in Lima, the Markham School, learning English language, the RP pronunciation that we used to learn as kids. And but later you derived onto French, Italian, Portuguese, etc. But there was a pivotal point, a turning point in your journey that casually turned you from being a polyglot to being a hyperpolyglot. It's that, and it was basically in a casual way. Your mom, when you were in 3rd or 4th grade on secondary school, you were punished due to bad qualifications, and you didn't have nothing to do, staying close at your room, and you began to learn languages just for fun. But that means a wide open door for a new world. Tell me about that.
Right.
It's
well,
a very nice story.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, what you said is correct. I was around 15 years old, and it was a semester where I have a very low grades, and my mom grounded me, and so I discovered a course of Romanian, and I started to learn by myself, but just grammar. But before I learned Romanian by myself, I also had I was learning French and Italian, but anyhow, I was forced to learn French. That's also a very important comment, because at first I hated my French teacher. I didn't have I had a very bad relationship with him, and but I think it's a matter of inspiration. I've thought about it a lot, and I think that's a matter. I met people during my adolescence who inspired me, and one of them is an active member in HYPIA. I met all Cesar. Cesar is definitely has been a big inspiration for me, and I'm really. Yeah, and I really thank him for that. I remember also my Italian teacher. He was a French. He's French, and he spoke like 8 languages or 9 languages. And for me, by that time, I was wow, like it's incredible. So and also I have my motivations for my professional life. So when I was 16, I had my clear idea that I wanted to learn the 6 official languages of the UN. So which are Spanish, English, French, Chinese, Russian, and Arabic. So those were like my targets. Well, so I started to learn all these 6 languages, but apart also I had a list of other languages I was learning. So it's basically all of this combined. And of course, yeah, something important is that I also like to imitate. I like to imitate accents. I'm pretty like I like doing it, and
yeah, just for a joke or as a fun, yeah.
Yeah. So and also I like to play music. So I think that also a trained ear helps you also to acquire and reproduce different sounds.
Indeed. About that, I want to ask you the first. Uh, the next question is about the traditional approach. I mean, to learn a mainstream language and through mainstream methods. It's more like not necessarily is as effective as it seems, even though that we can realize that us as hyperpolyglots, we tend to use we tend to learn nearly half of our languages as an autodidact. I mean, when we have built our core of language knowledge, from that turning point on, we tend to keep learning as an autodidact, or even though, yeah, downloading materials, watching through videos, or read by ourselves, full of grammar books, etc. Tell me about that.
Well, probably as many polyglots. You are older than me, so perhaps, but I guess we experienced the same thing, because back when we were young, there was not much internet, and for now learning a language is with all the material there is on YouTube. I mean,
exactly,
you have much more.
We have right now all the materials available. Yeah.
Many. I mean, you can learn, or at least some words in YouTube from. I mean, I think every language in the world. I mean, there are people speaking and trying to learn them, and but I developed by myself my method. And of course, I've had so many language teachers, and I started to take the best of each one of them and who work with me. And that's something I discovered, that not everybody learns the same, and everybody sometimes have to go into groups. But probably a student thinks that it's not learning, but I think that's because he has his own way, and I've noticed that people, they don't discover the best way to learn, because the teacher normally follows a method, already made method, which not necessarily works for everyone.
Exactly. Next question. Well, the capability that as hyperpolyglots we have to change from one language structure to the other, the knowledge of different grammatical structures, also we have basically two main ways to learn a language. I mean, basically to learn the grammar, and I mean to decode the grammar, and then to memorize hundreds and thousands of words of vocabulary in order to build our language and try to acquire some basic levels at a relatively quickly pace. Well, in that sense, this is a very mathematical approach. But there are also people who love to learn languages in a much more natural way, because they want to listen music, even to dance, to share food, to make love with the languages. In that sense, belonging to a certain community also helps to learn a language.
Of course. Yes. Well, I would say that I'm not the one who listens to a lot of music in that language. Probably in a much advanced stage, or later stage, I would say. Well, when you start learning a language by yourself, it's mainly theory, right? What you acquire. But then when you meet the people from the native speakers, people from your age, and you start to learn another type of that language, right? And that's very enriching for me. I like that in that process. But of course, I always think that language is like a building, right? You need a very solid structure of your grammar. and then you can add, I mean, all the bricks. I mean, and you, if you,
Exactly.
but if you,
We tend to associate thousands of word roots at the same time.
Yeah, but if your structure is weak, then everything goes up, because that's why I think that you first need to have a very solid grammar structure, and then you can add in some new words and vocabulary. But the structure is very important, because in the end, languages is it's following rules. To follow rules, you have, that's the grammar. Grammar is rules, and you have to follow it. And then, of course, you that's the way you learn it, or you can express it. That depends how much vocabulary you have. But that's memorizing. But in the end, it's follow rules, and that's basically what a language is.
Precisely that point. In your work, in your job, of course, you have to treat with clients from dozens of countries, dozens of territories, and they spoke dozens of languages. And as much as you can, you try to face their problems, to resolve their problems in their native language as much as possible. However, well, changing from one language structure to another implies, like I used to define that as like a juggler. When you juggle with language, imagine that you have all your 20 languages in juggling 20 balls in both hands. Okay, I attend a client, I pick up a ball, and meanwhile I'm talking with that client, trying to solve it, to troubleshooting with that client. I am making with the other 19 balls, juggling with only one hand. Okay, I finished that call with the client. I pick another ball with another client, a different ball, but with the other 19 language, still juggling with one hand, and so on. In a sense, it's a gymnastic that we are used to do this.
Right.
Do you feel the same sensation?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's like you exercise your body, you exercise your brain as well, and I think that's something completely. I mean, that's like a muscle we learn to develop, or how to use, right? Because that when you open the doors, and you start speaking different languages, and you don't feel confused, because many people, oh, they say, no, I've been speaking I don't know, Italian for quite a while, and I cannot speak Spanish anymore. But I think that our skill is that, I mean, that we can change, open and shut the window very quickly.
Exactly. And for example, about associating word roots in real time, I remember when I learned Catalan in 2002. It was my 6th language, so I could say maybe barely consider a hyperpolyglot from that point on. But the point, I remember when I met a Catalan guy, Sergi, who was at that time at 4 years in secondary school in Spain. I was 24, and as both used to like basketball, he was playing at the junior team at Hospitality Llobregat. He, I mean, we had an interest in common. Well, chatting with him, I realized that he had some bad, huge mistakes when he tried to write me in Spanish. I realized that those mistakes were because he almost never used Spanish in his daily life. So maybe ingenuously, naively, he asked me that if he can write me in Catalan. But for his surprisingly, as I had at that time, an average level of Italian and a very basic knowledge of French, that was enough basis to okay, I accept you the challenge. And for any line of code, for any line of chat, okay, temps is equal to French. Okay, finestra is equal to Italian. Okay, that word is equal to French. Okay, that word is equal to Italian. And that point on, I could build my B1 Catalan vocabulary in just 6 weeks.
Right.
Have you
Right.
experienced that? Have you experienced that? Some.
Yeah. Of course. I think that our brain program. I mean, that's, I think that once our brain has a structure of a certain language, I mean structure and vocabulary, then I think we associate once with another. Okay, this is like that. This termination is like that. Okay, so in zione in Italian, then sio in Catalan, and sion in French, right? So and son in Portuguese, right? So that's the rules that you mostly realize when learning. And okay, so then basically you can build up very quickly your vocabulary. But that works when you learn related languages. But for instance, when you start learning Finnish, for instance, it has nothing to do with any language. That's when you start from zero, and then you need to see how you correlate or
Exactly.
how. Yeah.
That was I experienced when I learned Euskera, when I learned Basque,
Oh,
and
wow.
when,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
when I learned Turkish. In that
Right.
sense, and of course, when I was child, when I learned Hebrew, learning a non-Indo-European language means that you have to learn vocabulary from scratch, almost as they are not Indo-European. You don't have any language to support previously. So you
No.
have to bring,
No.
it's an additional extra effort to not only to learn grammar, but also to learn vocabulary from scratch. And
Right.
I remember when I learned Basque. It was in 2003. I met a girl from Santurci, from Bilbao, in an minimalist and a forum, and I began a friendship, and on basically almost unbeknownstly, I began to pick up some Basque words, and then okay, teaching that language. It took me 3 years to achieve a B1 level that right now I have an A2 level. But the effort was worth.
Uh-huh.
And when I realized that, hey, Euskera has 18 cases. No.
Wow.
Don't think about that. Irache,
Wow.
my teacher, said me. Okay, no. Don't think about that. That girl said me. Think that those cases think simply that prepositions are suffixes.
Right.
And
Right. Right.
So I didn't think about cases at all, since I had in my mind that prepositions are suffixes.
Right.
That's the same
Right.
with the 15 prepositions in Finnish. I mean, because when you have the combinations of star, stat, star, stat, star, stat, illa, and all that stuff.
Right. 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 I mean, yeah. I mean, I think that the complexity comes depending on your experience learning languages. For instance, I remember I never wanted to learn German because this accusative dative. I mean, for me, it sounded like, what is that, right? But then when I learned German, and then I started with Russian. Then okay, Russian has 6 cases, and it wasn't that. It wasn't that surprising for me, because I mean my I already experienced it all, but the same problems with German. So when I started with Finnish, which was actually by accident, because Finnish was not in my plans at all. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't that that difficult. But I mean, for some people, the declinations might be. I mean, the declensions might be the most difficult part. For some, the writing or reading, for instance, Japanese or Chinese, that's probably because I mean, Chinese grammar is very simple, but the reading and the writing, that's challenging.
About reading and writing, and about pronouncing correctly. But remember that as Japanese and Finnish doesn't have enough consonant clusters, they must generate words through consonant gemination and vowel lengthening. For example, it's not this, and in a difference between in gemination or in vowel length means implies a different meaning. For example, in Japanese, it's not the same to say ite rather than ite. Or for example, in Finnish, when you say tulen, 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 they are words.
I mean, there's a very good example in Finnish, like the word kuusi, like kuusi, kuusi. So yeah, I mean, and also in Chinese, the tones, right? The tones is also some challenging because you mispronounce the tone, and you know, for instance, ma, it's a horse. Ma, it's a type of tree. Yeah, it's no ma. That's a tree. That's a type of tree. Ma. I'm sorry. Ma, it's mom. Ma, it's a type of tree. Ma, that's a horse, and then ma, it's to curse someone. So you can curse the horse mom if you mispronounce, right?
It's like that poem.
Yeah. So yeah, That's all. Yeah, but I mean, once you master the pronunciation, I think that's achievable. But the problem is memorizing all the hanzi, all the kanjis. That's something that's also challenging, at least for me. What I've seen, I think that's even harder than the declinations.
Every language has its own nuances, its own idioms, and its own flavor that only can achieve knowing their local culture.
Of course, and another part of Finnish is that the spoken language. You know, I was learning Finnish from the books, and the kirjakieli and the puhekieli, and it was like the spoken language and the written language. It's different, right? Even when Finnish write informally, for instance, if you say that you are Peruvian, in Finnish is oletko sinä perulainen. That's the formal way of saying oletko sinä perulainen. But I never heard no one said that in the
yeah, you can be understood. You can be understood, but you will sound very formally, like a literary language.
Yeah.
Well, the same appears when I speak Hebrew, because I learned literally just for Hebrew, and it's not exactly the same as the Hebrew spoken in Israel, but essentially it's the same language. But it's not another dialect; it's just another register. It's not
yeah.
Remember,
and that's
there are a lot of languages that we have at 2 or even 3 different strata. For example, about Japanese, you have Hyosyungo, that's the standard language that it's compulsory within the government, the administration, and the formal education, and the government and the media. Then you have Kyotugo, that's the approximation to the national standard, that's enriched with the local dialects, and the local dialects themselves, when you have literally a lot of mutual unintelligibility.
Right. Well, I think that the worst, it's even harder in Chinese, because China is enormous, and the different dialects, it's really sometimes impossible to learn, and that's why it's very interesting, because in the Chinese TV, you see that the news have the translation in Chinese, the Chinese letters, what they said, because sometimes the accents are so difficult to understand that they need these subtitles.
No,
Interesting.
in this case, because in China they share the written, they share the writing, but they are not dialects. Literally, they are Chinese languages themselves. I will give you an example. You know that in almost every part of Argentina, well, in Buenos Aires, of course, and also in the Chinese community in Lima, they are not from, especially from mainline.
The north,
They are not,
the Cantonese.
From,
Yeah.
They are not only from areas from China that speak only Mandarin, but they're also Cantonese, Minnan, Hokkien. In fact, in Buenos Aires, there are mostly Chinese from Fujian and from the Amoy Xiamen dialect, and Fujian is immediately in front of Taiwan. They are the Chinese in Buenos Aires are mostly Taiwanese or Fujianese, and they don't spoke. They don't speak Mandarin. Mostly they speak Hokkien. So the point turns worse when the police investigate some Chinese organizations that control the supermarket franchises, and they approach official translator in Mandarin. She can that translator they cannot understand because they speak Hokkien.
No.
And themselves speak. I mean, Hokkien it can be as different as between Romanian and Spanish.
Wow. Yeah. They're not mutually intelligible. Yeah. I mean, they're Taiwanese.
Spanish is not mutually intelligible. Well,
yeah.
We have still three or four questions.
Okay.
You know that we have 4 factors of destruction and or suppression of different languages and cultures: territorial conquest,
right,
economical interests, religious imposition throughout the history from different religions, from different cultures. I mean, territorial conquest, economic interest, religious imposition, and cultural industry. Say that the challenge for surviving, the challenge for survival of the minority language, it's permanent, because not everybody enjoys, not every minority language enjoys official protection, even those as a co-official level. For example, about Quechua or about Guarani or about even though a lot of endangered language. I mean, HYPIA has, even though a program, started a program for rare language specialists that encourage from those people who doesn't speak 6 languages yet, but speaks a rare, vulnerable, or endangered language to qualify as a HYPIA member under a special category, the rare minority language specialist, applying through a much simpler interview, but dedicating or consecrating to that minority language. It's in that sense. For example, we have Liaquat Alizani from Brahui, or Zenia Farhat from Burushaski, or Kaisanana Juan for the Taucas language in Taiwan. We have
wow.
Nice. In that sense, about learning Quechua, I guess it was a challenge for you, but Cesar is also a Quechua speaker, so.
Yeah, and actually it's funny because we speak the same variant of Quechua. Because in Quechua, they're very different ones. And sometimes it's difficult to understand between each other, because normally people speak about Quechua, but these are Quechua languages, so there are different varieties of the language. So yeah, but I mean, of course, it's a unique language in the sense that it doesn't relate to any of the one of the languages I've learned. It has very interesting things or similarities in grammar to the languages that I speak, so that's also very interesting. Because and as I said, mostly of my learning goes with associating languages. The structure, oh, that's resembles to this one, and then I start building up the language.
Yeah, indeed.
That's
For
mainly
example,
my method.
Quechua and Turkish share subject, object, verb, or the prepositions and suffixes, or the left branching, for example. Yeah,
Right,
and,
right.
In that sense, it's a very good point about the native, the innate capacity versus the product of training, a product of training, and I mean, what about what's your opinion about learning languages, or the ability of learning languages? What's your opinion? Innate capability, or specifically through training? I mean, do you think that Hyperpolyglots is only a training product, or an innate capacity, or the sum of both? What's your opinion about it?
I think it's definitely both. I think it's like every practice, or every, like, it's like a sport. Some people have they're born with a skill, but if they don't train it, people who weren't that skilled or born with that skill, and if they train every day, they can get better. I believe that as everybody has abilities, has skills, but not everybody exploits that ability. And but if one has the skill and trains, well, you can be very, very competitive. So I think it's a mixture of both.
Precisely about competitiveness, or about precisely about that issue is the last question. Most of us learn languages despite our capability, despite our innate and or trained capability. Most of us, we have to learn languages due to emigrating to other country, or though learn languages due to the pressure from the global market, to the labor market. In that sense, I ask you the last question: the necessity of learning languages, it's for surviving or for pleasure?
Well, I think it depends on the
philosophical question, but
yeah. Well, I mean, of course, I mean, if we are talking about a migrant family going to a certain country and they need to adapt, or they need to learn the language to get a job, that's a matter of survival. Of course, they need to learn the language, otherwise they won't eat, or they won't. I mean, and if they migrate to a country which very poor social benefits, like so, like, you need to learn, otherwise you die. But of course, there are people like us that we are language lovers, and regardless of we're gonna travel that place in our lives, we're happy with that. We feel that satisfaction when expressing in those languages, and finding a native language speaker, and hey, I speak your language, wow, and it's that feeling, it's marvelous.
We share the same.
Yeah. So
we share the same level.
It's a passion.
Indeed,
it's a passion,
undoubtedly it's a passion. And for me, it's the great honor to have the interview. Okay, he is Jorge Fernandez from Lima, Peru, and it was an interview for HYPIA, Hyperpolyglots International Association. I'm Matias Barmat, Director of Recruitment, and I hope that you like it. It will be until the next time.